What's up, and welcome to a special episode of First Geek 411. I'm your host, Cameron Franklin, and with me as we get timey-wimey over on West Coast, Best Coast is Emma. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a good week. It's another Spoilercast. 2 in a row.
2 in a row. Yeah, I don't know if we've ever done back-to-back Spoilercasts before.
It's great.
And
we're on top of things this time around.
Yeah. Although it is funny that like us on top of things is also us arguably being a week late for The Last of Us and a week late for this. But you know.
To be fair, we had book club, so.
Yes.
This time, it makes sense.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens.
But yeah, I'm excited for this. We are, of course, talking Doctor Who Series 15 spoiler cast for tonight. Talking all things in Gatwa, Doctor Who, time travel. Are there going to be creepy crawlies? Maybe. And all that kind of jazz. But before we get into it, of course, you can find us around the internet as OneGeek411. Join our Discord server. Shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch live on Twitch and YouTube Monday nights around 6:30 Mountain Time. And you can also find all of the VODs over on YouTube where you can like, comment, and subscribe. And then you can also check out that Redbubble store. Before we get into the spoiler cast, Emma, what have you been up to this past week?
It's been a pretty chill week. Oh, I just thought of something else to add to my list that I will talk about.
I'll allow it.
Thank you very much. But I've been jumping back into Slime Rancher 2. I finished like all of the story content for that's been released because it's still in like not beta testing, but like it's pre-release form. But I've just been chilling in that, and that's been a lot of fun. I've also been doing a lot of like craft projects, both this weekend and just throughout the week. Different like knitting and crocheting and adding like studs to things, just kind of like putting pins on jackets and things. For a couple of concerts that I'm going to later this year, and it's been a lot of fun and just peaceful and chill and quiet. And while I've been doing that, I've been watching The Apothecary Diaries, which is an anime. It's a lot of fun. It's in like, I don't know specifically what time period, but it's in like historical China? Japan? I don't know my history very well. And it just follows this young woman who's an apothecary, and she ends up getting hired by a royal family to like help take care of the people, and it's a lot of fun, and it's the furthest I've ever gotten into an anime series, and it's a blast, and it's really cute, and yeah, I highly recommend it to people because it's just a good time, and she runs around and just really loves her job. And it's great. So those are the things that I've been doing while doing those things. And then yesterday was Sunday, yes. I took a friend of mine down to Orange County to get a tattoo, and that was just a fun like girls' day out. She doesn't drive, so she asked if I would take her down to this artist, and I was like, sure. We'll just hang out for the day and just make it a girls' day out. And it was a lot of fun. And it just, fortunately, her appointment finished up in time that we were able to get back home before a lot of the freeways got shut down. For anyone who doesn't know, I am in LA. It's not as bad here as the news makes it out to be, I will say. But we still were able to get back home before freeways were shut down, which is good. So it's just been a very quiet week, all things considered. So yeah.
I hope you stay safe, all that stuff in LA especially. So
yeah, that's the goal. Stay safe.
For me, in the span of between last podcast and this podcast, I got better from my con crud. And then my allergies kicked up. And so now I'm not feeling well still, but it's different still.
It's
from
a
last
different
week.
illness.
Yeah. And so it really like picked up Tuesday night. And so I spent like most of the week not getting great sleep. And then for like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, my mouth just tasted like cough drops for like 72 hours straight. So that was a blast. I'm feeling overall much better now. I feel like I'm on like the very tail end of it. But for people that joined us over on Checkpoint Church for Summer Game Fest, you can definitely hear it. Like as we're doing that of like, I am definitely lower energy and not like as talkative. And I feel like I still don't sound the best, but like we're making do and getting through it all. And so, and then while I was sick, I also got the Expedition 33 Platinum. Let's go. That final boss. Dang.
Killer.
Like,
Sucks.
I definitely, yeah, like they're super good. I definitely dropped the difficulty down and still like took me several tries to get through it. And I'm just like, man. But yeah, fantastic like setup and like very difficult, but also in like what you would expect from like a final secret boss. Feels like, hey, you learned how to play this game, right? And that's really like the skill check that it's doing.
Yeah.
And so very cool, very excited. Fantastic platinum overall. And then it was my 75th platinum. And so,
nice.
You know, there's been some people
Congrats.
that have been like doing it for their 33rd platinum. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
That would have been fun. Yeah.
Alas, does not work for me. And then also over the weekend, I realized that Inscription was on PlayStation Plus. I don't know if it was new or if it had been there a while, but I've been wanting to play that. And so I started and beat that game. And so I don't know if I'm going to go for the platinum in that because there's a lot of like post-game challenger runs that you have to do. And so for people that don't know Inscription, it's a deck-building roguelike. And without going into too much spoilers, there's something more meta going on than just like the game. And so part of the game is also like unraveling the mystery of the bigger stuff. And so definitely a game that I recommend going into if you're remotely interested in like mystery games or like deck builders. Recommend going in as blind as possible. Just because like there are some really cool twists. There's definitely was like the twist was not what I thought the twist was also. And so like that was really cool. Kind of getting to see that played out more. And it's a game that like builds on itself really well. And so that was very fun. And then also this weekend was the 10th anniversary of my local brewery. And so went to that, enjoyed some drinks and got a commemorative like glass for it for the event. Their theme for it was Ren Fair. So there was a bunch of people like dressed up as if you were at a Ren Fair, which like fantastic. We did not dress up, but it was very cool to go and get to hang out there. I wish that I would have felt better because as someone who was struggling like to talk, going to a crowded place with a bunch of people where it's very loud was not conducive to having a sore throat. And so, but we made it. They had like a dill pickle beer that was really good. And so
a dill pickled beer?
Yeah. It was like a sour.
Interesting.
And so I'm not like
Did you
a
try
huge
it?
dill.
How was it?
It was good. I liked it. It's something
Okay.
that like I would get again. Like it's obviously kind of like novelty. Like I don't know if it's something that would like do well on the menu long term. But as someone who likes sours and likes weirder beers, like I don't like IPAs, I don't like heavy beers, like something really weird like that appeals to me. And so that was fun. And then also this weekend, my mead finally stopped fermenting. So we're getting ready to move that to the next step, hopefully this coming weekend. And so can finally get my bottles back, can finally start my next cider and all of that kind of stuff. And so very excited for all of that. But chat, comment section, let us know what you have been up to. as we go through, and we'll see if we have time this week to do a post-show chat, as we went long last week, and so we'll see how that goes this week, even with us getting an earlier start than normal. So, but let's get into it. As a reminder for people, we are going to be doing a spoiler cast, but we are going to keep this first section spoiler-free, with the intent that hopefully if you're somebody that's like tangentially interested in the season of Doctor Who, whether you're a fan or whether you're new to the franchise, that you can kind of have this as a check-in, high level, what did we think, all of that kind of stuff. And then we will dive into the spoiler cast. We only have one image this week, so I can't transition us to a new image when we actually get to spoilers, but we'll make sure that there's a pretty clear delineation after we finish our introduction to when we go into spoilers. So this is the second season of Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor, who is an incarnation of the Doctor, a Time Lord alien who travels through time and space in the TARDIS, which appears to be a British police box. Virata Sithu joins the series as the new companion Belinda Chandra, while Millie Gibson also returns as Ruby Sunday from the previous series companion. The series was preceded by a Christmas episode in December of 2024, and it was written by former showrunner and head writer Stephen Moffat, where Nicola Colin appeared as a one-off companion. So, high level, Emma, as we always like to do, what's your experience with this franchise? Again, gestures broadly to the space behind you. And then... high level, what did you think of this series? And we'll say for this, we will be including the Christmas episode.
Great.
Because, spoilers, it's relevant. So
it is. General experience, hand waves. I just did a quick Google of when the third series / David Tennant's second season came out. Yes. So, series 3 was March of 2007, and that was when I started watching after the second season. So I've essentially been around for over 17 years at this point, in terms of being a fan of the show. So I kind of like it just a little bit.
Yep.
It's my vibe. It's my jam. So I am very deep in it at this point, and cannot leave. And what comes with that is that I've been around for so long that, like, things that bother me, I'm not gonna, like, put in a lot of energy to spout about it online in terms of, like, being a keyboard warrior, because it's like, you know what, it's gonna happen. I'm glad that we got this far as a show that has run for this long.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, as long as you're not changing the entire base lore of the show, looking at YouTube, Noel, you know what? It's a campy, low-budget science fiction TV show. They're gonna do whatever they want with it. And I'm just here to vibe. And this season was a solid vibe. And enjoyed it. It was a good time. It felt a lot more like the early days of the reboot. That's in part because we have Davies and Moffat back in some capacity. Davies as the showrunner, and then Moffat steps in every once in a while to write something or contribute in some way, shape, or form, and that's a lot of fun. So, high level, this season, loved it, had a good time. Just here for my comfort TV show, and yeah.
So for me, I got into New Who probably like late 2010s. And that's kind of when I first started watching it. Didn't really connect with the show. And then Deanna and I ended up doing, like, binging it together. I feel like it was COVID. I could be wrong, and that could have been a different point in our being together. But I feel like it was after you and Shanine joined the podcast. And so,
yeah, I remember this, yeah.
So I feel like that would have been 2020s. And that was really when it started to click for me. Matt Smith is my doctor, and River is like my favorite character, and so like really her introduction and what that means for the overall plot I thought was super interesting. And that was really when like I went from being somebody that was enjoying the show to being someone that like is a fan of the show. And so I haven't seen all of Capaldi or any of Jodie's stuff. And so that's still like on my to-do list, is to go back and rewatch those. But
we love Jodie. She did everything she could with what she was given.
Yeah.
So she gets all of the credit for carrying the entire show.
Yeah. I have like been to a panel with her, and it was very cool. I loved getting to see her talk about it. And I do one thing I do
fabulous.
Yeah, I do like about Doctor Who is the general appreciation of like it's not Jodie's fault. Like
it's very much like across the fan base. It's not Jodie's fault. Like everyone will say that. It's not Jodie's fault. She did everything she could.
And so so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And then this is the first time ever as a fan that I was watching episodes I say this, series 14, the introduction of Nshuti's Doctor, was the first time ever as a fan I was watching episodes as they came out. Other than this, I've only ever binged the show. So this is like my first time like actually being involved with like weekly discussions like online and like reading theories and stuff like that. Yeah. And so that's been very cool. And then I do have some like high level understanding from the Magic the Gathering, Doctor Who, Universes Beyond set. But that, of course, is very high level and not much beyond, that's the name of a card that I recognize. And so, but yeah, that's kind of where I am coming from. High level for this season, I feel like this, we said this with Last of Us last week as well. And I'm going to say it again here. I feel like this is another series that struggled with the number of episodes in this season. I feel like there was a lot of really cool ideas that were set up that were just not remotely followed upon. Once we get into the spoilery discussion, we'll discuss why some of those possibly happened also. But
I will sort of touch on that briefly, high level of this is a show that, again, has been around for 60 years. The entire premise of it was definitely built around having longer episode seasons. From the time it started back in the 60s and to the time it was rebooted in 2005. It thrives on longer episode seasons. So it's just getting hurt by having a shorter season.
Yeah, and like, well, I think Last of Us season 1 probably could have gone for like 10 to 12 episodes. This one really felt like it needed to be 15. And I said, and I feel the same way about the previous series as well with Nshuti, like his first one. Like, I really feel like both of the seasons that we've had have struggled with that short season, like the new streaming age of shows. And so I really would like them, for whatever happens with series 16, I would really like them to go back to at least some more episodes, because like I really feel like that's a struggle. And then I will also say, like, kind of in my complaints about like there being some dropped balls this season, one of the fun things about Doctor Who is that you can always come back to them.
Like, you can always come back to them.
Yeah. Like, there's a pretty big like mystery that is set up that is just never referenced again for the rest of the series. In terms of Belinda Chandra. And like the good news about like this show is that they can at any point in time return to that character and come in and do stuff. And so I do think that that's pretty cool. Like, again, I wish they would have resolved the cool mystery that it seemed like they were setting up, but I am definitely interested in, whenever they do return to this, in getting more of that. And so, but yeah, so that's our experience with the franchise. That's our high level thoughts on this series. We are now going to transition to Spoilercast, or spoilers part of the Spoilercast. And so
there will be spoilers.
If you're watching, there will be spoilers. If you're watching later on YouTube, I will hopefully have separate timestamps for when non-spoiler talk starts and then spoiler talk starts. And so, but in spoiler section, probably one of the biggest structural things for this series. Oh, and also we're going to do this kind of like what we did for last week. We're going to talk characters, and then we're going to talk episodes. But we're going to keep the character conversation to the leads this time, and then discuss the side characters as they come up in their episodes. That way I feel like we won't be like dancing around stuff as much when we talk side characters. Yeah, and we can just like get into them as they're relevant. Also, I feel like more so than Last of Us, there's a ton of side characters, so we're going to be skipping many of them. Just by nature of this show.
Definitely a show that thrives on side characters.
Yeah.
Thrives on side characters.
Yeah. So with that, kind of getting the elephant in the room out, this season does end with Inshuti's doctor regenerating, and we find out, we'll talk about who he regenerates into later on. Let's tease that for a future spoiler.
Fine.
For when we talk about what we're expecting.
That's what I'm very excited about, personally.
Yeah. And then when we talk about the final episode. But with that, I do think that, going to the point that I was just making, I do think this is why some of Belinda's plot points get dropped, is because there was not the expectation necessarily that he was going to be leaving as quickly.
I did see a thing floating around to touch on that specifically. The general tradition with New Who is that the actors have stuck around for 3 seasons and then left. The exception up until now has been Christopher Eccleston, the Ninth Doctor. And now Ncuti is breaking that with only being there for 2 seasons. One of the things that I saw floating around was that because there was some questions about if/when the next season would get announced or confirmed, and the delay of when that would happen, because there is a delay until 2027, and Ncuti didn't want to put his career on hold. Like, he loves working on Doctor Who, but he didn't want to sit around and wait and not do anything until anything was confirmed. So some stuff on the back end did get like shuffled around to sort of take that into account, which is fair. So it's a rumor. I've seen it in a couple of places, and it makes some amount of sense, but
yeah. And I think there the biggest thing is not did they know, but when did they know? Yeah. And so it definitely feels like there's some stuff as we get later on, even with the finale itself, which of course by then obviously they would know that he was going to be leaving, but like it definitely feels like there was some stuff that either had to have been rewritten or had to have been very much truncated or something like that. Even with some of like the more meta narrative for what's been going on with this doctor, like a lot of that doesn't feel resolved, which again, the joy of Doctor Who is that it doesn't have to.
You can always go back to it and figure it out later, which is nice.
It's a lot like comic books in that way, where like there are entire like comic book runs that are spawned off of a random comment that someone made one time when writing a book, and like they had literally no clue what this thing meant. They were just leaving breadcrumbs for other writers or themselves later on, and they were like, I have literally no clue what happened here, but like and so it feels very akin to comics in that. But so talking about all that with Ncuti, what did you think of his portrayal of the Doctor in this second season? How do you think it compared to the first season? And how do you think he is compared to other Doctors?
He's fabulous. I definitely enjoyed this season of his better than his first season. I think it definitely felt like he'd settled into it quite a bit more, which was great. And he's definitely like a fun sort of different. I mean, every actor has their own take on the Doctor, and this was just like a fun, different experience of that character, the like mythological time traveling, the savior of humanity almost. and he's just fun and joyful and light, but in a very different way from like the 10th Doctor or the 13th Doctor or whoever. Like he's just living life in a different way, and I think he appeals to younger generations quite a bit more um, than like the current generation that's like sort of grown up with it, like myself, but in a good way. Like I enjoy him. I think he's fun. But I did feel like there was some like opening of the character to bring in younger generations and um like bring them in a good way. So I thought he did great, and I know this is like getting into a specific episode, but I loved the scene between him and Jodie as the 13th Doctor. It was just like a fun little like moment between essentially the two doctors who broke the mold of the character the most. You've got the queer black doctor and then the first woman doctor. And it was so sweet and I loved it. And I love that they're definitely feeling more confident in making those like casting decisions for these characters now of like just broadening their horizons. So
Yep. I want to echo kind of everything that you just said. I really like his take on the Doctor, and I really like. There's like a meme going around of like take a shot every time Ncuti cries, but like,
yep.
I love that. Like I love that we have a like. An LGBTQ doctor. I love that the Doctor is much more emotional, not just like extreme rage or anger at like injustice, but like is much more emotional and is much more in tune with how people feel compared to some other doctors. And so I've really liked that take on the character and getting to see that grow out of it. I feel like they also did a fantastic job in costuming has done well overall, but like in this season especially, they went so hard on the costuming, both for him and for Belinda Chandra's character.
Yeah.
Like they went so hard on both of those, and like I want to shout that out because like while and I think we discussed this in our previous spoiler cast of like one of the things that's cool about previous doctors is like while they have had different clothes, they've all had an iconic look.
Yeah.
One of the things that's like interesting about Ncuti is that he doesn't have that. He does not have an iconic look.
Like one specific default.
Yeah. He just looks awesome in everything all of the time. And love that.
I think my favorite outfit of his was like the suit kilt thing. Yeah. It was like a kilt, but also like it was like a suit with like a suit vest. And the kilt was made out of like suit material. It was cool. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, and so it goes hard. I've really liked this. As I was saying in the previous points, like I am super sad that we're not getting more of him as the Doctor, at least as the main Doctor. Again, as you just referenced, Jodie shows up in this. Like there's gonna be plenty of opportunities. Like
he's definitely one of those actors I can see like fully wanting to come back for guest appearances. Like just from interviews and things that I've seen with him, he seems like fully like, yes, I would love to come back for a guest appearance. So
it really seems like he's not leaving with bad blood or anything like that.
No.
And so I fully anticipate that we are going to be seeing a whole lot more of him as I'm not like we'll see him every season, but like I think that he is going to be one of the actors who always is up for coming back and being another part of Doctor Who, and I am excited about that. Next major character is Varada Sithu, who plays the companion for this season. What did you think of her performance and the character of Belinda Chandra as a whole?
I thought she was great. I loved that they had her like really sort of stand up to some of the more questionable and rather insane things that the Doctor does, and just be like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, like, you can't actually do that without like someone's permission, basically. And because he's just so used to like running around and being the eccentric mad scientist, almost in a mad in a good way, but just like having a character who like fully questions like the things that he does, even though she enjoys the adventures, but she's also like, I just want to go home, I don't want to be here, you're a little weird and like
Mm-hmm.
doing some odd things that aren't necessarily super okay. They're not like terrible things, but they're also not great things. And I thought that was great to have someone sort of in that position of like really being a challenge for the Doctor in a different way.
Yeah. I really liked her character. Again, gestures broadly at not enough episodes of this season.
Yeah.
And so I feel like overall, Verada did a great job as a companion. I feel like she did like the job of the companion is basically always to be that audience surrogate of like who is the person that like that's why like the companion's always from the modern time period, whatever the release year is. That's why they're always
2025,
like,
2012.
Yeah, at least
whatever.
like in longer terms, they're never an alien. They're always like a human from Britain during the release year. And so I feel like she did a great job playing that part. As you called out, I like that she both has episodes where she's like kind of infatuated with the whimsy of the Doctor. Like not like in love with him, but like in love with like what it means to be with the Doctor.
Yeah.
But then at the same time is also like, yo, I want to go home.
Yeah.
Like I got a place to be at a specific time and you're making it hard for me to do that. And so not blaming the Doctor, but your as the general life circumstances.
Yeah.
And so I will say, this is the thing I was referencing at the very beginning. I do feel like they really dropped the ball on who Belinda Chandra is. We get a reference early on that she is, that the character in Boom, who was played by the same actress, is not Belinda Chandra, but is a descendant. Then they literally never reference it again for the rest of the series. And so
it's just that one time.
Yeah.
I will talk about this later on, but I do think they also dropped the ball on her, like in the last episode. I will be one of those people.
Yes.
Who was like, that last episode did not do her justice. It was very much the Martha Jones treatment. If I will be so bold. But that's just a general addition of
hard agree.
Yeah.
We'll get into the specifics of that for the last episode because I feel like
we'll hold off on the details until
we're gonna have a lot of thoughts about the final episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am very hopeful that we'll see Verada again. Again, I hope they resolve this mystery of who she is, and I am very much looking forward to hopefully seeing her come back. We're not going to talk about Ruby Sunday specifically as part of this, but like hopefully we'll see her return kind of like we did with Ruby in this episode or this series. We'll talk about Ruby when we get to her episodes, but I would love for us to, whoever the next Doctor is, I would love for there to be, I say whoever,
in the credits, they list everyone as the Doctor, except for that individual. They just say introducing.
Yeah.
I will just point that out.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that as well. But I would love for Verada to show back up and for us to see more Belinda Chandra. We do know, based on the end, that like there still is the planet that like worships her, like because the Doctor does have to go and release the certificate
Chandra
thing back into space to keep this
Miss Belinda Chandra.
Yeah. And so, like, we do know that, like, would be a really fun place for the Doctor to return to, like, before they get all of their memories back, because it's kind of timey-wimey on, like, when do they fully remember all the stuff the previous doctors have been through? And so I would love for them to go there in like the first episode and be like, who the F is Belinda Chandra?
Yeah.
But
I have a mystery to solve.
Yeah. And so, but those are our two leads. We'll hit the side characters as we go through them in future episodes. But let's go jump into our episode breakdown. And so this series did kick off with Joy to the World as our Christmas episode. And so in this one, the Doctor arrives at the Time Hotel, an establishment that allows visits to historical points. The Doctor enlists the aids of Trev, a hotel employee, as he investigates a mysterious briefcase. The briefcase eventually takes control of Joy. I skipped the line. Trev's manager arrives in Joy's hotel room with the briefcase, and the Doctor follows him in. The briefcase takes control of Joy, and the Doctor finds a strange device inside that disintegrates Joy. Suddenly, the Doctor from the future arrives at the Time Hotel with the required code. The future Doctor returns to the hotel with Joy. About to disintegrate Joy. The future Doctor returns to the hotel with Joy, straining the current Doctor. He takes a job working at the hotel, befriending the manager Anita, awaiting the opportunity to get back to the Time Hotel 1 year later. The briefcase of Veilguard origin is to be used to create an energy source. Trev, who connected psychically with Veilguard's system before he died, revealed the briefcase's location. The Doctor opens it, but Joy lets the star seed inside of her. Joy pilots it into space, where it detonates safely and the Star of Bethlehem, and the star gives hope and comfort to those who see it. What did you think of Joy to the World?
I love that we're still getting Christmas episodes, even when the general, season release doesn't line up with Christmas. What are words? I don't know. I thought this was fun and still kept within the spirit of their Christmas episodes, because the Christmas episodes have always just been one-off, fun little a holiday thing. Here, let's go have something fun that isn't the entire season, doesn't carry through the entire season. And it's great, it's fun, and it's cute, and we get a fun little episode with that actress, whatever her name is, who's also in Dairy Girls, who I love her. She's so good. I like to think that, I don't know if this is true or not, but I like to think that it's every British actor's dream to show up on Doctor Who at least once in their career, because there's a lot of solid cameos from people throughout the years. But I thought it was a fun episode. It's been a while since I've actually watched it. And it does introduce this fun, additional, you've got the hotel that's all these doors lead to different places throughout the universe and time. And that's a fun introduction into, throwing that into the universe as something that exists, that we then see a callback to later on in the season. This is a thing that's around, while still keeping it it's something to add to the lore of the show, while also still being a Christmassy adventure, and just a good time for all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this did something that I like for holiday episodes, where it feels very standalone, as a special, as you would expect for a special, but it does not fall into the holiday trap or special episode trap of not being relevant. I love that this ties back in later on in this series, and that we get a very quick hey, remember that thing that we planted? Here it is again. And I love that we see the Time Hotel come back up. Kind of similarly to what I was talking about with Belinda. I like the fact that this now leaves breadcrumbs for other writers to mess with. Do we return to the Time Hotel in the future? Do we have shenanigans because the Doctor can't figure out what door the Time Hotel is? Stuff like that.
We got to talk to the boss about that one.
Yeah. And so I really like that. And then I also like one of my favorite conceits about Doctor Who is whenever the Doctor can't time travel. And so I really like in this one that we get something where the Doctor finds out a piece of important information. He can't do anything with that information other than wait. And he's like
Yep.
literally stuck waiting for a year for
He's
a specific
forced
opportunity
to sit around and experience normal time like everyone else.
Yeah. And while not as extreme, it's kind of similar to what I liked about 73 Yards in the previous episode or the previous series, where like now this character has this different experience than what we normally see them experience. And so I think that was very cool. But then, okay, let's get into our regular episodes. So episode 1, The Robot Revolution, we get the introduction of Nurse Belinda Chandra, whose ex-boyfriend Alan Budd named a star system, or a system's star, after her. The Doctor gets stuck in a time fracture, and ends up going to the planet Belinda Chandra 6 months ahead of Belinda herself. After being finding this robots have enslaved the natives, he joins a rebel group and then ends up rescuing Belinda from the robots before they can augment her into a cyborg queen. Belinda surrenders to protect the rebels and discovers the robots are being controlled by her ex-boyfriend, who was also abducted. According to the time fracture, caused the robots to bring him to Miss Belinda Chandra 1 in 2015, causing the revolution to first begin. And so, let's see. Belinda touches the present copy with the past copy of the planet certificate, which triggers a reaction that kills Alan and restores the robots to normal, thus liberating the natives. The Doctor agrees to return Belinda to Earth, but the TARDIS is repelled from landing on, I believe, May 23rd, 2025, specifically. And so, what do you think of this? We get the introduction of Belinda here. We also get a pretty cool puzzle. And so, what'd you think?
The thing that I love about this episode is that it very much feels like, as someone who has read a couple, a Doctor Who adventure novel. Because there are hundreds of official, like, adventure novels that exist for Doctor Who as a series. Like, they've hired authors to write just like, write adventures that aren't able to make it onto the screen. And this episode feels a lot like one of those, but in a good way. Like, it feels a little bit campy, a little bit like just like all over the place, but it's all fun. It's like, I mean, we read the Ruby's Curse, which is another Doctor Who. It follows River Song, but it's still like it's an official Doctor Who novel. And sorry, I go cooking things again. This episode felt a lot like one of those. It feels like an adventure I would have found as a novel rather than an actual episode. But it's still like a lot of fun and just like a good time. And I probably personally wouldn't have made it the first episode, but just like you've got the iffy boyfriend, which is a bit of a broken record for Doctor Who at this point, but in the best way possible. I'm thinking specifically of Mickey from earlier seasons, who then like redeemed himself for the better. But it's just, I love that they named the planet Miss Belinda Chandra, just without any spaces in between words. Good job, guys. Yeah. Very brain,
very robot of you. Like, how do you process this? Like,
yeah. And it's just like a goofy time. Like, yeah.
So this episode's a fun kickoff. Yeah, I did not love this episode, but I did not dislike it that much either. I think when we compare this to the previous series for Nshuti, I feel like the lows of this one are a lot higher. Like, not as low. when it comes to some of the specific episodes. But I do feel like there's also not an episode like 73 Yards. And so I'm very interested to kind of see how these episodes age. And yeah, overall, I like this one. I liked the gimmick that the robots can only process every 7th word or something like that.
Nice.
And so I really want to go back and see and like rewatch the episode now that you know that, and go through and see, okay, well, what are the things that they're missing in these other messages? And so I think that that's super fun. Again, I do feel like part of this episode kind of skipped the cool part, which is them having to figure out that this is how the robots work. I think that would have been very interesting, but because we just kind of come in with the Doctor and the rebels all knowing this, but I do think that that's interesting. And then
you do get the at the end. Sorry, this is a random thought. The fascinating addition of, or not really addition, but the side characters at the end of this episode, who were escape. Oh no, I'm thinking of a different episode. Never mind. Ignore me.
I'll say there are some cool side characters in the next episode, which is episode 2, Lux. So the Doctor attempts to take Melinda home via the indirect route, which lands them in Miami in 1952, where they investigate the disappearance of 15 people in a cinema. They encounter Mr. Ring-a-Ding, a cartoon character who is possessed by Lux, the god of light and member of the Pantheon of Discord. Lux traps them in a film reel where they eventually encounter Doctor Who fans, and we get to see the Whovians. And then upon escaping, Lux imprisons the Doctor, trying to steal his regeneration energy. And Melinda convinces the theater owner to blow up the film, which then creates a giant sunlight. And then when exposed to light, Lux expands infinitely until he becomes one with the universe. And so for me, I liked Lux a lot. I think this is a fun episode. This also did a Doctor Who thing that I enjoy, which is when you, generally speaking, for the Doctor, cannot kill your enemies, how do you defeat them? And the solution here with Lux is like, well, he absorbs light and grows. So if you just give him infinite light, he becomes a non-issue because he becomes all light. Yep. And I'm like, okay, like that's pretty cool. I did like the return of the Pantheon of Discord here. Again, this feels like something that I would hope that we'll see more of as we go. That we continue to see this, where we've had, I believe, 4 members of the Pantheon now, 3 last season, and then Lux in this season. And I would love for us to continue to see this as like recurring villains in that regard, of just like, hey, what are these people up to? Because I think that that's a very cool addition to the canon. Yeah, what did you think? Oh, Doctor Who fans. I love that we get the meta commentary of the Doctor Who fans here. And I also love that they figure out that like they are like, and again, the meta thing of they are here because the Doctor is here. That once Doctor and Belinda leave, they will cease to exist. And like, that's a very interesting commentary on like what it means to be a fan of something. Because like, obviously our fandom doesn't go away if the thing stops releasing new content, but like, it does end in a sense. And so
it takes a couple of generations for that thing to sort of be forgotten almost.
I think as like an example, like imagine what like Lord of the Rings fandom would look like if it wasn't for the movies. Like you need something to like reboot the franchise and bring it into a new generation if it ends. Which I've said before, I think that's one of the things that the Doctor Who does so well, is because every 2 to 3 series, great jumping on point for new people. Great. You don't have to have seen everything else. And so, But, what do you think of this one?
So, side note, I was thinking of the side characters from the Bubble episode, or the Dot. It's the future
Dot
episode where all of the young adults go and exist on social media. Anyway, this episode, I thought this was such a fun episode. To my previous point about British actors just wanting to make cameos and things. Lux was voiced by dang it, I just forgot his name. Blank Cummings. Whatever his first name. Alan Cummings?
Alan, I think.
Alan Cummings, yes. Which is great. He did a fabulous job. Again, I just love it when this show pulls in random, like, well-known actors for an episode, and they just do it for fun. Like, this is a show that actors do for fun in their free time in the best way possible. And I thought this was a great episode. To your point, I do hope they continue carrying this, pantheon of gods or whatever throughout, because it's a fun, like, addition to the show, and sort of the like, how this version of our world and our universe work, of just like, we've got a god of music and tricks and light and things, and how each of them manifest is different.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get, as a result, we also end up getting callbacks to Classicu, which is great. And it's another fun little quirky, like, this show does quirky great. Like, it's suited for these weird stories that wouldn't fit anywhere else. Of, like, an animated character comes to life and is going to threaten us all. The only other scenario we really see that in is, like, Looney Tunes, and that's, like, a completely different sort of setup for that kind of scenario. I love that they did also touch on, in this one, the fact that they are in 1950s America, and the fact that our two main characters are both people of color who do not normally, did not at that time period get the same, treatment as a white person. And they did, like, acknowledge that, and, like, they didn't just, cover it up with fantasy or fiction, or like,
it wasn't everything's great because the doctor's here. Like,
yeah,
I feel like the show can definitely have that tendency of, like, it's fine, the doctor will take care of it.
Yeah, but, like, they didn't just, like, hide it away. They're like, no, like, we are actually, like, there is gonna be some issues with them trying to figure this out, because they can't just walk in and do the things, solve the problem normally in the way that they would, which was, good for them. I mean, Lux expanding infinitely to becoming light. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but you know what? If it works, it works. Yeah. I've learned over the years not to think too hard about whether or not Doctor Who makes sense, because ultimately it doesn't make sense. It's not a show that is built around making sense. And that's why I like it. And this one was solid. Also, we get more Miss Flood. I will mention each of these episodes has an appearance of Miss Flood, who we've seen since last season. We will talk more about this later. But all of my
she does have some very specific cameos in this that we'll talk about as we get to those episodes. But yeah, every episode we are getting at least one Mrs. Flood, and keeping that, like, theory train going. Okay, next up we have The Well. The Doctor and Belinda arrive on a planet 500,000 years in the future, where the expedition is investigating a mining colony that has gone silent. They find Alice, the only person alive, after a mysterious entity has emerged from the mining well and killed the crew. The entity is concealing itself behind Alice, and anyone who moves directly behind her is killed. We find out that the Doctor has been to this planet before. It was previously known as Midnight, and he has previously encountered this entity. Alice explains that the entity causes the person hiding behind it to attack, but her deafness has protected her from its influence. Eventually, skipping ahead some, the captain non-fatally shoots, or eventually Belinda gets the entity. The captain non-fatally shoots her then jumps down the well to try to get rid of it. The Doctor and Belinda return to the TARDIS, and meanwhile, one of the troopers believes they see something behind another's back. What did you think of the well?
Best episode of the entire season.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I loved it. It was great. I told everyone I know who watches Doctor Who to go into it completely blind, because that's what I did. And it was like, I'm so glad I did that, because for people who don't know, this is a callback to another like almost standalone episode. It's part of a season, but it's like one of the most iconic previous episodes with the 10th Doctor. And that episode takes place almost entirely inside like a train car. And it's the Doctor's encountering the exact same enemy, just in a different scenario. And this feels like classic New Who, like, and classic Doctor Who formula of showing up on a planet and something's wrong, and the Doctor's got to fix it. And you soon realize that the problem is a creature that we've encountered before, and it's an iconic one that you don't even know what it looks like. You just know that it exists, kind of like the Vashtin Narada or whatever else. And that reveal was so good, and it's just like the nice nitty-gritty part of Doctor Who to help balance out the fun, goofy cartoon, god that just leaped off the screen in the last episode.
Yeah.
I loved this episode. I could gush about it forever because it's so good and felt like such a good Doctor Who episode. Of like, that's going to be on my short list of things that I watch on repeat forever and ever. I thought it was great. I could talk about it forever, because we also kind of learn at the end that the thing potentially gets away. They're leaving breadcrumbs for a future writer.
Yeah. I'll say for me, I really wish I remembered the previous episode that this was from. Like, it had just, because like I binged all of these and I've only seen through like those parts of the series once. And so I appreciated the flashbacks to David Tennant encountering this monster before, but I did not remember anything that had occurred there. But
when you're someone like me,
I will say,
watched the series like 10 times.
Yeah.
It
definitely is cool to have those breadcrumbs. And that's something that, like, overall, I feel like they've done really well in these previous two seasons of giving you breadcrumbs both to classic Who as well as to older New Who. And so I need to go back and watch that one. But then, kind of to your point, this, in a lot of ways, is a very classic Doctor Who episode. We get, like, the waters of Mars. We get, like, all of these, there's like the Clockwork one as well.
Yep.
There's so many that kind of has this gimmick of weird monster with weird rules. The Doctor has to figure out the rules to save people. And so I really liked that as a premise, and I think this one is very well done. I like the gimmick here of, like, if you walk behind the person, you die. And then I think that that's super interesting and is well played out. We also start to get teases that these people have never heard of Earth as part of this, which builds into this bigger mystery of, like, why can't Belinda get home? And so I think that that's super interesting and is played up well. Our next episode, we get our Minimal Doctor episode of this series, where we get Lucky Day. Opening in 2007, an 8-year-old Conrad Clark encounters the Doctor and Belinda, setting up their homing device, the Vindicator, that they've been charging up as they have been traveling around. I don't know if I've referenced it. Leading to his obsession with aliens. Then we jump to 2024, Conrad, who sees the TARDIS and is saved by the Doctor and Ruby Sunday as they encounter a creature called the Shriek. A year later, Conrad seeks out Ruby, who has adjusted to normal life after leaving the Doctor, and invites her on his podcast about her experiences with the Doctor. They begin dating, and Ruby eventually believes the Shriek is going to return and attack Conrad. and gives him an antidote to block it. Eventually, Unit captures the creature, and it turns out Conrad is the leader of a group of conspiracy theorists that want to publicly discredit Unit. He live streams a confrontation with two phony Shriek, leading to public backlash against Unit. When Conrad breaks into Unit Tower, Kate releases the Shriek, and the terrified Conrad admits that he was wrong. Devastated by his betrayal, Ruby tells Kate that she needs some time to herself to recover. And an earlier version of the Doctor pulls the imprisoned Conrad into the TARDIS to berate him, and then puts him back with his own and tells Conrad his own dismal future. And then back in prison, Conrad is eventually released by Mrs. Flood. Probably the most direct thing that she's done so far this season. Yeah. Breaking him out. And so what do you think of this one? What did you think of, again, a very hands-on interaction with Mrs. Flood here? Yeah. And what do you think of this as our non-Doctor episode?
Conrad as a character, I think they nailed as this is the guy you love to hate. It's they really set him up for that perfectly, of him, tricking Ruby into dating him, and she feels like she's actually back to a normal life, and then he turns around and pulls this rather insane, haha, got you, essentially. And really, he is they did such a good job of having him be the character you love to hate, and it works, especially when he shows back up later in the series. As a hands-off episode, I don't feel like this episode works as well in this season. Again, it plays very much into the the season needs more episodes for things like this to really land. I feel I think you've talked about this before, of the hands-off episodes where the Doctor isn't really present don't land as well in the shorter seasons. And I'm definitely feel that with this one, because it's I want more of Nshuti and that whatever it is they're working on to get Belinda home. But this does also set up the end of the season, so it just kind of feels like it's out of place but also needed. You can't just get rid of it without an impact on the end of the season. Oh, Miss Flood. This is the first time we hear her introduce herself as anything other than Mrs. Flood, and that's as the General, which basically confirmed at that point all of the theories that she is a time lady, because up until this point there's so many speculations of she's got to be a time lady, she's got to be the Ronnie or the granddaughter or any other number of time ladies that whatever. And the ending of this episode with her releasing Conrad and being and he's who are you? I'm I'm the General. I think that's what she calls herself. I wrote it down.
While you do that, I don't
the governor. She called herself the governor, not the General. She's I'm the governor, which is ooh, what does that mean? But it follows very conventional Time Lord naming patterns. You've got the Ronnie, the Doctor, the Master. There's other characters from Classic Who that follows as well. That pattern follows as well, because they've got their Time Lords. Side note, lore drop, nerd, me.
Nerd.
Time Lords follow a very similar thing to the Fae, in the sense that they don't give out their real names. They have their real names, which hold a lot of power, and then the names that they go by every day. So the Doctor isn't the Doctor's name. It's just the name that they've given themselves to be called by people so that people can't like control who he is. So there's like 3 living characters in the show that know the Doctor's real name, and that's River Song, the Master, and then a third random person. I'm spitballing three characters. So like they follow very Fae rules with that. So when Miss Flood showed up and was like, "I'm the governor," that was a very direct clue to those of us who know that kind of information of like, you're right, she is a time lady.
Yeah.
Which one though? Up to you to figure it out. Because we didn't know of a governor. Literally. So yeah.
For me, like you referenced this, I said this in our normal podcast, like after I watched this episode. I do not like this episode. One, because I don't like the doctorless episodes in these shorter seasons, just generally speaking. I mean, again, 73 yards, fantastic episode. I think very well done, but much harder to have those episodes when you only have 8 to 9 episodes with the Doctor.
And I'm definitely
I also did not like
with you there.
Yeah. I also did not like that this doctorless episode is another Ruby Sunday episode. Yeah. I love Ruby. Great companion, great character, fantastically played. But I really wish if we were going to get a doctorless episode, it would have been a Belinda episode.
Yeah.
And she is our current companion. I wanted to see her have to tackle something in a way that felt like meaningful and on her own. If we're going to have this, have her rise to a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And she didn't want to be there. Like, she just wanted to go home.
Yeah. And so I really think if this would have been a Belinda episode, there's also some things that we could have teased for the future that would have been great in a Belinda episode, but we don't get those. But now, all of that said, I think Conrad is a super interesting character. Very punchable face. Very well played as the person that you want to punch. And I did like that we got... Yeah, and I do like that we get an evil in this that isn't strictly like the Cybermen or the Daleks. Like, it's just a guy who is a jerk and is an awful person. Like, sometimes that's the evil that needs to be defeated. Again, gestures broadly. Interpret that how you will. So I overall, I don't think this episode is bad, but I think it is not an episode that we should have gotten. Nor is it one that like Conrad does show back up. And so like he is relevant to the future plot, but like
for the end of the season could have been built into a different episode.
Yeah. And like, while I don't necessarily want us to, you referenced it earlier, of like all of Belinda's exes, I don't want us to get into like a Scott Pilgrim situation here where like everyone that she's ever dated is a villain. But like, I think that this episode would have been much more interesting if this was somebody that Belinda had dated and we get to see more of her encountering the Doctor or hearing about the Doctor as a younger person rather than having this be another Ruby episode. Our next one, and I will say, I already feel my voice struggling, so we might need to go a little faster, just because I don't want my voice to actually go out. And so this is the story and the engine. The Doctor and Belinda arrive in 2019 Lagos, where the Doctor stops by his friend's barbershop to get a haircut. We find out that the barber has been keeping people captive and they have to tell stories. We eventually find out that this is to power the story machine, which is a god-killing device. Eventually we get a set of dubious CG as the Doctor overloads the engine with his memories, defeating it, and then redeeming the barber. And so, what do you think of this one?
I mean, Doctor Who is nothing if it isn't camp. Like
Yeah.
we need the sketchy CGI for it to really feel appropriate. Um, I mean, this whole episode, I do love it when they go and explore sort of different cultural
Mm-hmm.
spaces and things, and that's what this one does. It very much shifts to a focus on an African culture rather than something more Western. Um, and it centers around, these people who come together by sharing stories with each other in a barbershop, um, in, a back alley of a busy um, market. That's the word I'm looking for. Somewhere in Africa, Lagos to be specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it when they do that because they don't do it very often. Um, and the barber who's like the quote unquote bad guy in this gets a nice redeeming end because like not all bad guys like are gonna end up falling off the edge of the cliff accidentally because they refuse to give up their evil ways. Some bad guys are going to realize that they need to right their wrongs and try to live a better life. And I love it when Doctor Who does do that. Um, and this whole episode felt like a nice change of pace for the season and almost like an opportunity for this version of the Doctor to embrace that kind of heritage of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, being a Black person um, and being able to bond with other Black people. And it was a nice, just play into that of like him appreciating who he is in that moment.
Um, this episode is very much Spider-Man coded, and I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Like, we get this like God story engine thing that is weaving this web, and like we have to just defeat the interdimensional spider because if we don't, bad things will happen. It's so into the Spider-Verse, and I'm so on board. Yeah, this is a fun one. I liked the idea of, again, a very like Doctor Who thing of like the villain is powered by stories.
Yep.
Like, it's such a Doctor Who trope villain of like their power source is something weird and they're have to like, and I thought that was cool. And then, this is another one that I feel like would have been an interesting two-parter of like, I would love to have seen us get more of this, more with these characters. Like, not necessarily spend another episode trapped in the barbershop, but like, I think it would have been very cool if like early in the season we met some of these characters and then we returned and something bad had now happened like 6 episodes later. And so, or series 14 versus series 15. Like, we met these characters previously.
Like a 1 season difference or whatever.
Yeah, I think that would have been really cool. Next up, we have Interstellar Song Contest. And Emma, this is my favorite episode of the series.
Great.
Which is like no surprise as the person
episode.
who loves dumb Doctor Who. This is my favorite thing.
This is perfect to dumb Doctor Who. So I'm right with you.
So in 2925, the Doctor and Belinda are attending the Interstellar Song Contest, which is an evolution of Eurovision. When 2 terrorists from the planet Halia remove the station's oxygen shield, propelling the Doctor and 100,000 people in the audience into deep space, where they begin to freeze. Before they can die, the Doctor is awoken by a psychic message from his granddaughter, Susan Foreman, and returns to the station, where he vengefully shuts down the terror plot. The live audience members are eventually saved and revived the Doctor using cryogenic technology. Just before leaving to take Belinda home, the Doctor and Belinda are informed by a hologram of Graham Norton that Earth ended on the 24th of May, 2025, the day Belinda left. The TARDIS finally makes it to the right date, only to have the doors explode inward. After they depart, Miss Flood is the last of the attendees to be revived. Her body has been fatally damaged by space, but she bi-generates, becoming two women and who reveal themselves to be the Ronnie. The Ronnies then prepare for the next step of their plan. So, big episode. As someone who does not know who the Ronnie is, other than hey, they got a magic card, I was excited that we did. Yeah, basically mad scientist vibes, and so
that's literally what she is, though.
Yeah,
is a mad scientist.
Yeah, I like this reveal. I like, again, we talked about this. I guess this was probably I think this was a post show conversation after this reveal because I needed you to explain it to me.
Yeah, I gave you the classic Who lowdown on that.
Yeah. This does the cool thing that I like of like, well, now I'm really interested in classic Who because I do want to know more about who this character is. And like, again, I love that when Doctor Who embraces its long lineage. Like we talked about that with an earlier conversation tonight as well. And I like that we get to see that here. I like the confirmation of the low-hanging fruit that Mrs. Flood is a Time Lord, but I do love that we get that confirmation here and that we get to get the reveal of a bigger plan. We do get our second bi-generation, which is indeed something that they can do. Not necessarily something that I was huge on, but
yeah,
it is what occurred. And then, as I said at the top, I love silly, goofy Doctor Who episodes, and an Interstellar Song Contest Eurovision is 100% right up that alley.
Yep.
And I love that we get the guys that have to help the Doctor like take back over the station and get back to the control room. And I do think it's a very fun episode in that regard. There's also some really good jokes just in terms of like the host always being cryogenically frozen and then they get unfrozen so that they can do the show and then they just go back into cryo.
Yep.
And
that's just all he's alive for at this point.
Yeah. And so, yeah. What did you think of this one?
I am right there with you. This is a fabulous, goofy Doctor Who episode. Goes back to my point, Graham Norton showing up. British people just like to randomly show up on Doctor Who. It's just, they're just like, I'm here now. And it's like, okay, great. Hi, Graham Norton, playing Graham Norton. You're here now. And I love that. Like, I love that about the show at this point, because it's just like random British actors are like, hey, can I show up for an episode? Even like 10 minutes? And they're like, sure.
One day on set,
you're gonna be this guy.
Out,
and I'm so here for it. I love that. Second point, Dug-a-Doo as a song and one of the submissions to this competition was not in the script. It did not exist as part of the episode. The thing is, Murray Gold, the composer, who has been on this job since they rebooted it, literally got the script, was working on stuff, and then Dug-a-Doo just randomly showed up in Russell T Davies' inbox one day for this episode. Murray Gold just made it up on the spot and sent it to him. And was like, here's an idea for this episode. And it became literally like an internet sensation after this episode released. Like, people loved it. And all of the official Doctor Who accounts got in on it and were like, hey, we're gonna, change out the theme song to Dug-a-Doo now, and, all of these things. I love it when stuff like that happens for this show, because it's just like, it's things on the production side that, like, people who have been there for a long time get the script and go, I'm gonna, add my own little thing to this, send it out to the showrunner, see what they think. And then the showrunner's like, sure. Why not? You've been around for 20 years. Like, this is great. And then it, like, takes off, and it's great. So that's, another fun little fact. We do also see, aside from the Ronnie showing up, Susan Foreman, who is the Doctor's granddaughter and the very first companion, way back from when William Hartnell was the first Doctor. We get a little special appearance from her, and that was great. I am a sucker for the nostalgia callbacks on this show, because it's great. And as you said, I love all of the random side characters who get pulled into saving all of the people in this. Um, I will quickly explain for the general audience, the Ronnie is literally a mad scientist character who existed in Classic Who. Like, I don't just call her that generically. Like, she was a mad scientist in Classic Who, Time Lord, and did some wildly unethical science tests and was then defeated and now is back. Um, General, like, she's been around for a while, and the other nemesis to the Doctor, aside from the Master. Um, and I just enjoy that we got two versions of her.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about this with future episodes, but it sure is crazy that they had the character who's the granddaughter of the Doctor show up in this one.
Right?
We'll come back to that. In our next episode, we have Wish World. So set on May 23rd, 2025, the Doctor and Belinda wake up in their home, emphasis on their, both of their home, believe themselves to be a married couple. After breakfast, their daughter Poppy, after breakfast with their Dr. Poppy, they are visited by Ruby Sunday, who expresses doubts about their seemingly perfect world. Both the Doctor and Belinda start having doubts about reality around them following her visit. Later, the Doctor receives a message from Rogue telling him he is caught in a trap. After the Doctor realizes reality is wrong, he and Belinda are brought to the Bone Palace by the Ronnie. Here, the Doctor learns that the world was changed by Conrad Clark to be his perfect version, using the power of Desiderium, the infant god of wishes, and the Vindicator. Ronnie reveals that doubt from the Doctor and humanity is being used by her in order to break reality, thus releasing Omega, the founder of the Time Lords, from an alternate dimension, the Underverse. Remembering everything, the Doctor tries to stop her, but is locked out of the Bone Palace with Belinda imprisoned. Mrs. Flood and the Ronnie prepare to release Omega as the fake reality crumbles beneath them amid purple fire. While the clock strikes midnight and the start of the 24th of May, the day Earth dies. What'd you think of Wish World?
This episode is a great setup for a finale that flops.
Yes.
Like,
I could not have said
this
that
episode, a great setup for a finale episode. Like, it sets up the finale like perfectly, and then the finale flops. We'll talk about the finale next. But like, I would pair this with, you know, any other second to last episode in, like, I'm thinking of like the Masters era when he becomes Prime Minister of England or whatever and replaces everyone with himself. I'm thinking of that lead up. And then you've got all of the little floating evil balls. I've watched this show so many times, I could recite most of this off the top of my head. But like, all of the iconic finale lead ups, I would stick this in there with them because it's such a good way to lead up to that. You've got the return of Poppy, who we saw last season, just as a regular little kid toddler. You've got Omega, who's another classic Doctor Who villain, and a great. I love it when Russell T Davies brings back like iconic classic Who characters because he does it so well. Until this finale, separate thing. No. Separate issue. I loved the giant bone monsters things,
like
bone giants.
Yeah, bone monster dog-ish looking things, like
yeah. They just throw in a random side explanation and then move on for why they're there. But it's like this whole episode, you very much feel the doom of the world ending, especially since, you know, you've got all these moving pieces that have been set up for a while with Conrad and Mrs. Flood and essentially the Ronnie, and it just all leads up to a pinnacle point where you're like, oh, I have to know how we're gonna come back from this because this is like terrible. We end on the Doctor falling out of the sky. How are we gonna fix that? Like, also, he has a kid with Belinda. That's the only weird part that I'm like not a fan of, for reasons. But yeah, overall, a fabulous setup for a finale, and really gets you invested in a lot of the little details that we've been building up to for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we'll talk about the finality of the reality war in a moment, but I feel like this 1-2 episode is every issue that exists with these past 2 series of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Of like the setup and the mystery and all the stuff that happens in Wishworld is top notch.
Yeah.
Everything is so good. The mystery, like as I just referenced earlier, we met Susan Foreman again in the previous episode. We referenced the Doctor's granddaughter, and now we have the Doctor having a daughter. Like we actually have this in the world. So like we have this, like, is she real? What's going to happen? What is all of and I think it's super interesting. Like all of those setups, the idea of, again, as someone who doesn't know classic Who, I understand what something means when you call them Omega. Like I got it. Like
general, like, oh, that sounds bad. Yeah, because it is.
Yeah, of like, oh, this Time Lord is the Omega and they're imprisoned under the world. Okay, like I'm in. Right. Let's do this. And so super cool.
Do I know the lore behind that? No, but I'm in.
No, I don't need to understand. I'm on board. I also love, again, that we get the Sidarium, this infant god of wishes, and like we get the Ronnie going back in time to the birth of this kid, and then kidnapping this child to use them as like this young god to power Wishworld. Like I think that's
the
super
interesting. The 7th son of a 7th son of a 7th son.
Yeah. And that being like the prophecy or whatever that births this god. Like that's super cool. Like, and yeah. And so I think this episode is super cool. And I love that we get this end of the Doctor falling out of the Bone Palace and like, how are they going to survive? And then unfortunately that then brings us to the reality war, our finale of this series, where the Doctor is rescued from that falling thing by Anita, who uses the Time Hotel. And before we get into the rest of the issues that I have with this episode, and I think we have with this episode, I loved this.
Yes.
Like having Anita show back up.
Great.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Loved that. Super fun. And so Anita shows up from the Time Hotel as time resets to the 23rd of May. With Anita's help, the Doctor is able to restore the memories of Unit and then Belinda before the Ronnie reveals that the surviving Time Lords are sterile. She intends to use Omega as a gene bank to rebirth their race. The Doctor confronts the Ronnie as Omega is released from their massive beast who devours the bi-generated Ronnie. Mrs. Flood then escapes, and the Doctor uses the Vindicator to force Omega back into the Underverse. Ruby uses Desiderium's power to give Conrad a new life and restore reality, but at the cost of Poppy being erased while the baby god is adopted by Carla Sunday. Despite the 13th Doctor, who popped out of her timeline, trying to talk him out of it, the Doctor uses the power of his next regeneration to shift reality so that Poppy is Belinda's daughter. After saying goodbye to Belinda and Poppy, the Doctor appears to regenerate into a form that resembles his previous companion, Rose Tyler. Billy's back.
Yes. That's the only other part of this episode I like.
Yeah. And so I'll start us off for this. So I will say that there are 3 things that I love about this episode. I guess 4 things. I love the Time Hotel. I love Anita showing back up. Again, tie in with that special. I love that we get to see Anita like jumping through time to specific points of the Doctor's life and like trying to find him. Super fun. We get our only Dalek reference in these 2 series in this, like in that scene. So I liked that. And then I liked the, after they save the day, I love when the Doctor and Belinda are like passing Poppy's like blanket back and forth and folding it, and it's just getting smaller and smaller as they forget her.
Yep.
Super well done scene. And like Ruby is like, what are you doing? And like Ruby has that panic. And loved that. The acting in that scene, fantastic. Love getting Jodie back. And then I love getting to see Rose again. Again, maybe. Who knows? Unfortunately, those like 4 things that I liked are like 5 minutes out of this episode. And like the other like 40 minutes are not great. Like Omega, super disappointing. Giant monster thing. Like
I mean,
the
Ronnie, monster design was super cool. But
sorry, go ahead. Like the design was cool. It's just, this is a big monster, kind of like the exact thing that happened last season finale as well.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, the part of that also bothers me is, again, the last episode, the Wish World, was such a great build up to this huge threat. And then we fixed the threat halfway through this episode.
Right.
Like, you have this fabulous build up, and then it's over in like 20 minutes of a 40-minute episode, and then we spend the other 20 minutes just like, oh, something's wrong. Why are we still here? Why is this blanket getting smaller? Oh, this child is missing. Okay, I'm gonna go explode into a bunch of gold light to bring this child back. No. Well, okay, why don't we just spend that entire time, that entire 40 minutes, actually solving the threat that you spent, the previous episode setting up?
Right.
That's like my huge complaint with this episode. Is fabulous setup, and then it's over in 20 minutes.
Right. Like, not only is it over in like 20 minutes, both the new Ronnie and Omega are literally defeated in like blink if you miss it scenes, where Omega picks up the Ronnie, eats her, and then the doctor blasts like Omega.
A 1-minute scene. like
it's such a disservice to the end of the intergalactic song contest, because that like our introduction to the Ronnie is so cool and sets her up to be a super interesting character, and she just literally gets got by this thing, and then that thing gets got 5 seconds later. It is so upsetting.
It's so upsetting.
And like it does what I don't like, which is, this thing's a big threat, gotta make it big. Like I'm a sucker for the classic
human-sized thing.
Yeah, of like Missy. Missy is intimidating because she's a Time Lord, but like Missy is intimidating because she's a human. Like it's a normal actor playing this part, and that makes this character intimidating. Like having Omega be this giant monster instead of like an intimidating human, like somebody played by a human, you know what I mean? But like I feel like that's such a disservice to the setup that they have for Omega, let alone that he just gets got. Like
the midnight well monster is absolutely terrifying. We don't even know what the thing looks like.
Yeah.
It's a thing that attaches itself to other people, and you can't look at it. That thing is horrifying.
Yeah. And then I hate that, again, we saw Susan. The doctor now has a daughter. We find out that Time Lords are sterile, but now we have Poppy in this world. But then we get the reveal that Poppy isn't the doctor's child, which on paper I don't really have a problem with. But like,
can I do a brief actually?
Go ahead.
Who's David Tennant's wife? Do you know this?
Who?
There's literally David Tennant. His wife is Georgia Tennant, who literally played the doctor's daughter, who was a Time Lord built out of his genetics. So technically second daughter. Yeah.
Yes.
That's my minor actually. So there is another doctor's child floating around in the universe somewhere. Mild actually.
Yes. Yeah. But like, so I hate that we get this buildup of like, has the Ronnie in their attempt to free Omega actually created the thing that the Time Lords actually needed to keep their species going? Nope. good luck having the rug immediately pulled out from under you with that reveal. And then we also then get the scene after the Doctor brings Poppy back by shifting the universe 1 degree back, that like all of these scenes Belinda has actually been saying that she needs to get home to this date for her daughter, which is like not what the actual scenes were.
No.
Which okay, it's because time was shifted 1 degree off or whatever, but like it just felt really dirty to be like, like almost like
it was like, very dirty job to Belinda, like, in a very similar way that they did Martha dirty. So
yeah. And then I know you referenced it earlier. We also then get Belinda being like, I'm like, you know, props to anyone who wants to be a parent, but like, I'm just happy to be a mom. Like my job is going to be to take care of this kid. I can't go on adventures because I have a kid. And it's just like,
that wasn't what she was preaching for the entire season. She was like, I have my mom to go to, like, not I want to go be a mom. It's I have my family to go get back to, and my life to go get back to as a nurse.
Yeah, and I feel like had we had her not be able to like articulate why she needed to get back in specific, or have like her reference something but then something is missing as like the words are being erased or something like that, this would have felt better. But like it just didn't feel good to just have this characters like have their whole motivations shift because of this last scene. Of like, I just did not like that.
It did not sit well with me or a good chunk of the fandom, actually. Like, most people did not like that. So it's definitely one of those things that was like, that's not what she's been wanting this entire season. Like, she's been wanting to get home, yes, and it's to get home to be with her family and, you know, all these, you know, XYZ things. Again, like, props to anyone who wants the kids, like, great, like, no shame in that at all. It's just not what this character was set up to do the entire season. And then suddenly, like, in the last 20 minutes of the show, again, like, splitting the episode down the middle, basically, like, they just shifted all of the things that she wanted to something completely different, and it didn't work.
And I think, again, we don't know what changed with Nshuti choosing to leave after this series. Series, but if I was writing this, which, you know, I'm a much worse writer, it's much easier to backseat write. I would have had her struggle to articulate why she needs to get home on this day at this time. Some way of shooting that cool camera trick inserted here. Then throughout this series, I would have had her encounter things named Poppy. And like had that trigger that same effect. Like,
we did have Poppy flowers actually show up in an episode.
Have
the
a older
episode.
Poppy. Like have an older Poppy show up in the web of like some sort of tie-in to who is this kid, and insert cool camera trick here to connect all of these things together. And then when we get this reveal that Poppy's her daughter, camera trick again to connect all the dots between those scenes. I think that there's a much better way that you could have done this reveal that doesn't feel so like, I guess we're giving up on this character now. Like, it just feels like they dropped the ball on everything cool about Belinda, from being one of the coolest companions to, I guess we don't know how to end this character.
I mean, I love the idea of seeing the Doctor having that kind of personal connection with like a kid, like a little toddler. Like, it was fun to see the Doctor interact with a little child that way. But how the writing and stuff went about just Poppy existing as a connection to the Doctor in some way, shape, or form, like, just didn't play out. And just doesn't work with the, as you said, the character of Belinda that we got all season. And then we do also see, like, at the end of the season, the Doctor scans this infant with his sonic screwdriver the same way he scanned Belinda at the start, who called him out for it. But then here at the end, when he scans this child and essentially takes her DNA and, you know, does this very questionable thing, Belinda doesn't remember that, so she doesn't call him out on it. So it's just this whole scenario of like, is there really any change there?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Like, again, it feels like this episode, like I was saying with Wishworld, like, this is the epitome of even stuff that happened in series 14 of really cool ideas, ball completely dropped. Like, and to go back to kind of our thesis statement from the very beginning, we needed more episodes. Like, we needed more stuff. We needed more explanation for what's going on. We needed more hints and teases and stuff like that versus just having all of this dropped. Because then it felt like, hey, here are these pretty obvious things you're supposed to pick up on that just don't matter. But, like, if those would have been scattered out more, like, that could have been more interesting if we would have had, like had Susan show up in a previous episode. Like previous to before the finale, like had references there, or had like some other tie-ins to like the Doctor not being able to be a parent, like without getting into the fact that like, hey, Time Lords are sterile. Like, I feel like you could have set that up earlier. And I also do feel like you could have set up the Time Lords are sterile reveal, and then in the next have the next episode be Wishworld, and the Doctor instantly has this kid. And it's like, oh, like, what does that mean now? Like, I feel like there's a lot of other ways.
Didn't you just say they were sterile?
Yeah. And like, well, I don't think this necessarily like takes away from Nshuti's time as the Doctor. I really wish he had gone out on a much better finale than this finale. And so I think that they definitely dropped the ball in how you're treating this character. And again, kind of going back to what you said at the beginning, I cannot imagine this is how they planned on writing his character out.
It definitely, knowing Russell T Davies' general writing style and planning for the show specifically, this doesn't feel like what he had initially planned for the end of the season. But just like generic production and, you know, scheduling and renewal stuff changed enough that he had to adjust on the go.
And I feel like that gets into like the hard part of media, and this goes both ways, which is like media is so like structured by the people that can play the part, like for film and TV and all of that stuff. And like if you are writing this as a book, I cannot imagine this is what you would do. Nope. There's no way this would be the end of your second book in your series. Like,
no.
And I'm hopeful that they will provide some retcons, might be the wrong word, but like, I'm hoping that they'll apply some retcons to this in the future, just to like add more context, or again, add more with Belinda, bring her in, of like, so that doesn't just feel like we're abandoning this character in the most boring way possible. Like, boring in terms of writing boring. Again, nothing wrong with people wanting to be a parent, but like it just feels like such a boring sign off for this character of like it doesn't feel like her journey was complete compared to Ruby, who like felt like she had an arc in the last season. Like, we just did not get that here with Belinda.
Absolutely. Rose Tyler,
then,
the Doctor.
Oh yes, yeah. So let's get to the final thing. So I could talk about this
for
our
hours.
what's next. we do get the reveal that the Doctor has regenerated, as you referenced earlier with the credits. It does not say Billie Piper as the Doctor. It just says introducing Billie Piper.
Okay.
But what do you think here? What are your theories as someone who is way more plugged into like the bigger history of Doctor Who than I am?
Okay. So, the last time we saw Billie Piper on screen as a character in Doctor Who, I say a character for a reason. She was the physical manifestation of Bad Wolf. She wasn't Rose Tyler, she was the physical manifestation of Bad Wolf, which is essentially a force that came from inside the TARDIS to fix problems. That Rose Tyler had, pulled out of the TARDIS and into herself to then explode out into the world to fix problems. And the Doctor and Time Lords are very in tune with the stuff in the center of the TARDIS, because there used to be multiple TARDISes. There's now only one, because there's only one Doctor. And it involves dying stars and etc. And so, the current running theory, he didn't actually regenerate into Rose Tyler. That would be silly. One of the lines we get from the whole Bad Wolf arc is when she takes in all of that stuff, is that in part she was able to do that because the TARDIS recognized either a past or a future face that was very familiar. So the running theory is that currently the reason that the Doctor regenerated into Billie Piper, I'm just going to say, is because it's that future face that allowed Rose Tyler to take in the TARDIS energy without fully killing her.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the theory, is that she's not Rose Tyler so much as she is more so the Bad Wolf entity in Time Lord version. So it's a very different... She only says 2 words. She says, like, oh, hello, and it's not a very Rose Tyler way to say that. It's a very, like, mischievous, like, more Bad Wolfy way that we see from the 50th anniversary. So that's, like, the current thing, is, like, it's more the Bad Wolf side of Rose Tyler rather than the Rose Tyler side of Rose Tyler. That is a very, like, simmered down version.
Yeah, and I think going with all of that, this ties in a whole lot with this idea of bi-generation that we've gotten. That, like, when Jodie's Doctor regenerated, there is this familiarness of David Tennant. So even though the David Tennant plays the Doctor, he is not the 10th Doctor, or not playing the same. Like, he is playing this different Doctor who happens to look the same as kind of building off the idea of, like, things are getting different for Time Lords because they've now been regenerating so many times. And, like, while it definitely seems like they've obviously gone away from the, like, Time Lords can only regenerate X number of times, they're kind of getting into this weirdness now of, like, well, what does that mean? And I think they're, like, using that as ways to play with the regeneration stuff that's going on. And so, yeah, I really like this idea. I personally will be shocked if we get, like, a whole series of Billie playing this Doctor. I could definitely see this being either the Christmas special or kind of like what we had with the 14th Doctor, where there's going to be a small handful of episodes of her adventures, and then we will have her reincarnate and regenerate into the actual next Doctor.
New Doctor. Yeah.
I fully think that's what we'll see here. And again, how they go about that and how they want to explain or not explain. I think that you made some really good points. And, like, as someone who, like, really now needs to, like, also go back and rewatch the Bad Wolf stuff, like, that's such, like, probably other than, like, timey-wimey, like, Bad Wolf is probably one of the, like, most iconic New Who things. And so,
It
again,
to the
as we've
point
seen throughout, go ahead.
to the point that the production company, one of the main production
Yep.
companies that works on Doctor Who, is called Bad Wolf Productions because it was started by Doctor Who people and they had
Yeah.
the rights to the name. So Bad Wolf Productions.
Yeah.
I love this stuff.
Yeah. And I really think that we're going to see that be the tie-in of this continued callbacks that we've had to classic Who and older New Who. Like, this is just right in line with everything that we've been seeing these past 2 series. And I fully expect that we're going to see some very interesting callbacks to why this person is played by Billy. Same as like when we got the reveal of Rose Noble. Like, we all knew that was instantly important because both of those names matter.
Yep.
And so
both of those names mean something.
Yeah. And so I fully think that that's what we're going to get here. And again, I need to go back and rewatch Bad Wolf stuff, but or go like find the YouTube compilation of all the Bad Wolf scenes.
Yep. Yep.
It was like, speaking of something that benefited from longer seasons, the tease out of what is Bad Wolf is so good and is so well done.
So good.
But like,
it's
and honestly,
so good.
like now that we're talking about this, I think that's when I'm like describing what I would have done with Poppy, I would have Bad Wolfed it. Yep. Like I basically would have treated it the exact same way of like, you just have this thing that shows up again, insert cool camera trick.
Graffiti in the background. You've got, a missing persons poster. You've got, like they had for the Bad Wolf arc, they had, again, an in-world Bad Wolf production TV station. Like, that's something that the phrase Bad Wolf, they put into every episode somehow as like part of that world that just exists. And then when you start to know to look for it, you see it all over the place.
So yeah, I definitely would have treated it much more like that for Poppy, of like doing something like even something of like, help me mom, like having that appear somewhere, of like have that of like, oh, we don't know what this means, but here is this weird thing that's coming through time. Like, the TARDIS is trying to like pick up this signal kind of thing. But so we have that. Any other future thoughts, theories of where you would like to see Doctor Who go next? Or any other classic Who villains that you would like to see return?
So many. So many. All of the above. All of the above. I mean, there's just so many good. There's a whole like, there's a mummy episode with the 4th Doctor that's so good. It's just a mummy comes back to life and it's so fun. Just a generic mummy. We got that same thing briefly with the 12th Doctor, 11th Doctor, not Smith's Doctor, 11th Doctor. But it was like on screen for like 2 seconds. But I'm really along for the ride at this point. As long as it's not Chibnall, I'm pretty content. All of the other, showrunners have, proven to do quite well with the content that they have and the series that they have. I want longer seasons again. I miss the longer seasons. That's the only thing I ask going forwards, is give us back our 10 to 12 episode seasons. Because they were so good. We got, a lot of the most iconic episodes. In fact, all of the most iconic episodes are from the longer seasons, because the 7 episode seasons are a much newer thing. So that's really the only thing I want, is longer seasons. And I'm just riding the wave, as I have been for 17 years now. Roughly.
For me, I would, again, I don't know classic Who, so I can't necessarily speak to specifics of that, but I do want to call out that we now have this really interesting situation villain-wise, where they were very intentional with when the bi-generation happens, we had a Ronnie and the Ronnie.
Yep.
So, but Mrs. Flood as a Ronnie is the one that survived. And so I'm really curious to what that means now going forward. Like, I don't think we technically know what happened to the 14th Doctor. Or at least we haven't seen it on screen.
He's just hanging out with the Noble family.
Like, with the Nobles, like, and so...
Yeah, he's still just, like, until we're told otherwise, he's hanging out with the Noble family.
Yeah, and so I'm really interested to see, like, how long until we see Mrs. Flood show back up. I hope it isn't like the omnipresent thing, but I also hope it isn't a full, like, 2 series before she shows back up.
Yeah.
I hope that we see Mrs. Flood again sooner.
She's just hanging out
later.
the same way the Master is hanging out. Like, the Master's always there in the background. Yeah. And it's going to show up eventually. They just need to do the same thing for the Ronnie of, like, really be intentional about building up that concept of the Ronnie's always here somewhere doing some nefarious thing. It's just a matter of how soon are we going to run into her again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Master's never fully dead. The Master's just...
the joy of timey-wimey is that...
Also, speaking of the Master, as far as we know, currently sitting in a golden tooth that some mysterious individual has in their pocket, who has red fingernails.
Oh.
I keep a lot stored away when it comes to this show.
And so, so I hope we don't go too long without seeing the Ronnie / Mrs. Flood again. And then something I also hope is that we see some of the classic Doctor Who villains again. Like, I have liked that we are not just falling on the Daleks and the Cybermen and even the Weeping Angels now as, like, these constant, it's got to be one of these bad guys. I like that we've gotten a lot of, like, new stuff. And I like that we've gotten the introduction of the Pantheon of Discord. And I hope they show up more and that they become kind of a bigger part, especially as they get into, like the Toy Maker is the god of, like, games. Like it's not like they're doing, like, basic things. So, like, the Pantheon is someone that can show up now forever. And we can just kind of find out, oh, here's another member of the Pantheon.
Just randomly over here in this episode. Just for fun.
And so I hope that we see more of that as well and I hope that the Pantheon, again, maybe not as individuals, but as a general concept, becomes a recurring villain that we now have to deal with. And I would love us to eventually get a Sinister Six Pantheon episode where we actually get to see them interacting with each other, because we haven't had that yet.
No.
And so, or in a meaningful way. We had, like, the Pantheon reference each other, but we haven't had them like, directly.
We haven't seen them, like, face to face yet.
Yeah. But I think that is where we're going to have to call it after we do a final thought. Final takeaways, final vibes, anything from this series.
I'm here for a good time, enjoying it. Love that it just, in general, feels like the show is back on an upward trend post Chibnall. I will forever talk about my disdain for Chibnall. I've said this before, maybe on the show or on the podcast, but Doctor Who is very much one of those shows where you always hate the current era you're in and think the previous eras were the best time of the show. The thing is, that's like 95% true. The other 5% is Chibnall is the exception to the rule. That was never a good era.
No one ever liked that.
No one ever liked that, and no one will ever like that going forward. Like, everything else, like, yeah, in the moment, hated Matt Smith. In the moment, hated Peter Capaldi. Now, going back, it's like, yeah, those were great seasons. Those were great episodes. No, Chibnall's era, Jodie Whittaker did everything she could. Good for her. Like, she worked hard with what she had. The writing, throw it out the window. Terrible. Try again. So, as long as, like, you know, the showrunners do a good job. Don't do that guy. I'm happy.
I'll say for me, overall, I really liked this series. Like, obviously, we're ending on a down note because this finale is a letdown. But, like, I did overall like this series. I feel like they've did a great job with Nshuti's Doctor.
Yeah,
I'm definitely looking forward to what they do next. And this also got me interested in a lot more of the other media. Like, we read A Ruby's Curse for book club. Like, I'm also interested in, like, okay, like, there's comic books for this Doctor and stuff like that. I'm really interested in going and checking out more media.
Very, like, beach read-y type, like, I know there's a specific word for the kind of, you know, like, novel style that they are, but, like, they're very fun, like, lighter reads that are just a good time. All of the ones that I have are sitting in a box in a storage unit. That will one day get hauled over here when I have the space for them. But they're very fun reads. So
yeah, if you watched Doctor Who and are up, let us know what you thought about this series. Are we completely off on the finale? Did you love it? What do you think of this and Nshuti and Belinda's or Verada's Belinda? What did you think of them? And so, as an announcement, on June 30th, we'll be doing our next book club on The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Long. So come back and join us for that. And then in the meantime, I believe we should be on to some regularly scheduled Monday episodes until we get to July, which will then have a lot more spoiler casts. And so, as we get a whole bunch of movies that come out. And so, but come back and join us. You can find us around the internet as OneGeek411. You can join our Discord server, shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Check out the Redbubble store, watch live on Twitch and YouTube, and then find all of the VODs over on YouTube. And then you can also find us on our personal social media, minus Humar Witil.
Prepared with an eye in the prepared.
And it's been a great week.
Go travel in time and space.
Don't lose your child and then have to find them and
have
to get the universe corrected.
Be kind to each other.
Yeah.